I'm excited to be with y'all. I noticed that our dearest white chocolate, Miss Wanda, is not here this morning, but I know she's watching from home, and she was a little bit under the weather this week and lost her voice. And she said, it's not even worth me being there if I can't give y'all sass. So she's tuning in from long distance. I promised I would fill the gap for you today, Miss Wanda. I'm going to do my best. I know we're all dealing with this time of year, what that weather and the changes, especially here, can do. But we are in the second week of a series that we're calling The Greatest of All Time. That's right, we are naming the GOATs this month in anticipation of the arrival of the greatest of all time, who actually resides outside of time. Now, I want to address a couple of issues that emerged last week. I am thankful for the feedback that you guys gave me. It's not a surprise to me that I received more feedback on last week's message, which was the most sports metaphor heavy I have ever been here. The most feedback I've ever gotten in my time here the last 3 years, Texas living up to its Texas reputation. But some of you were disappointed. You were disappointed that I didn't actually address the Jordan versus LeBron debate head on. And that's because I don't believe I should have to. We're supposed to be reasonable people meeting here together. So, as God has said, come, let us reason together. I'm just going to say one name. And if you know how this name relates to the conversation, you already know who the GOAT is. We shouldn't have to have it. And if you don't know who this name is, just know that you're probably too young to have an opinion that actually matters about this debate. That name is J.J. Barea. I said what I said. Some of y'all are going to go look that up. Don't ask Siri yet. We got to wait a few minutes. I promise it'll be there for you. Now, there's only one other instance that I really want to address, is that when we got to the period last week where we talked about Tom Brady and Joe Montana, greatest quarterbacks, someone actually sent me a text message in the middle of service. Like right in the middle of the sermon. I know I'm in trouble when someone hits me right in the middle of the sermon when it can't even wait. But here's the thing, I got a beef to pick. They sent me a picture of Terry Bradshaw. I'm not going to out you and say who it is. I'm just going to say I could understand if you sent me a picture of like Dan Marino or something. But Terry Bradshaw, that's who we're going with? Okay. We got a period specifically set aside for repentance and restoration at the end of this sermon, and this aisle is plenty wide. And even Terry Bradshaw could throw a pass down the middle of that. Some of you gave me some feedback that I was happy to hear, and it was painfully honest. You said, for the first 20 minutes of the sermon, I wasn't sure what we were actually doing here. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it with you, but it did come together, and it was really meaningful in the end. So I just want to say thank you for sticking with me, and I'm going to give you one more good week filled with different stories and analogies. We began to ask the question last week, what is greatness? Real greatness. And we talked a lot about sports, and we'll do it again today, only because it offers such a great microcosm of our lives. It gives us a great allegory or comparison for our larger experience. We argued that greatness is irrevocably linked to the idea or state of permanence, that one-hit wonders don't attain greatness, that it takes sustained greatness over a period of time of achievement to be great. Because in all our chasing for greatness, no matter what venue it's in, whether it is sports or it's music or it's the arts or it's in life or it's in business or it's even in your family life, what you're really chasing is immortality. That's what we're trying to grasp. Because inside of every single human, God has put a heart that calls and longs for eternity. We need to know, we want to know that we're not just wasting our time with this crazy thing that we call life. We want to know above all else that our life actually matters. That we're not wasting our life in meaninglessness. And the promise of the world, the promise the world gives us is that if we achieve greatness, that's how you will ensure that your life matters. But despite that promise, Father Time, as we saw last week, erases all of our accomplishments to nothingness. We all eventually become a footnote, if that, in history, never to be remembered. Even Air Jordan and every other great figure on history's mountaintop has succumbed to the relentless grind of time erasing everything that we do, except for those of us who are in Christ Jesus. Because for the Christian, Through the work of Jesus, we become something that lasts forever. And as we read last week, our works do follow us. And it's because we belong to a goat who's not a goat at all, a goat that is a lamb, the goat that is the lion. And today, as we turn our attention to what it means to live a truly great life, since we have now defined what greatness actually is, how do you actually live a life like that? I want you to remember that last week we said that we as humans think there are two ways that we can evaluate or recognize greatness. One is just by being exemplary for a long period of time. If we can, we want to shine forever. Or to shine so brilliantly in a moment that the memory and the legacy will last forever. And there are a few instances in which great figures have seemed to step into moments like that. There are a few moments in history that haven't just captured our imagination, they've actually redefined what we understood to be possible. And they changed how we have defined and understand and evaluate greatness. Some moments might be springing to your mind now, or perhaps you're looking at the slide and you're thinking of what those can be. Maybe a moment like Michael Phelps bringing home 8 gold medals in the 2008 Olympics defines greatness for you. Maybe if you're a golf fan, or maybe even if you're not, Tiger Woods and his dominance in the 1997 Masters, 18 under par, is greatness for you. Or maybe after he destroyed his life and then rebuilt it, winning another one in 2019. Or maybe it's when Tiger won the U.S. Open on a broken leg in 2008. That's greatness for you. Or broken legs, it might be T.O. playing in the Super Bowl, or Byron Leftwich being carried down the field by his offensive line. Maybe it's Tom Brady, like we talked about before, coming back from down 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Maybe it's the guy we talked about last week who has moments like that for you. Maybe it's Jordan's 63 points against Bird Celtics. Maybe it's the flu game. Maybe you're younger than the age of 35, and to you it's Kobe's 81. Maybe you could care less about basketball, and for you it's Serena Williams winning the Australian Open while pregnant, without dropping a single set. I don't watch tennis, but that's just ludicrous. Maybe for you, you go back even further. Maybe it's Secretariat winning the Triple Crown. Maybe it's Carrie Strug bringing home gold for our gals on a busted leg. Maybe it's the Miracle on Ice. Maybe for some of y'all, it's Rocky beating Drago and single-handedly ending the Cold War in 1984. I said what I said. The list could go on, but perhaps the most recent moment like this happened in Game 4 of the NLCS. This year, the world of baseball saw a performance that nobody could have ever anticipated. And it was so crazy and so wild that it became a meme. And it was so wild and unprecedented that even people who never watched baseball were drawn into the conversation because they needed to understand what was happening and why everyone was going crazy. There's a guy who plays for the Dodgers named Shohei Ohtani, and Shohei is already a unicorn of a player. He's from Japan, and he is a great pitcher, and he's also a great hitter. In fact, not just a great hitter, a great power hitter. And those two things usually don't go together. A pitcher hitting a home run used to be like something that you might see once in a lifetime, but this is a guy that does it regularly. So much of a unicorn in baseball is he that they changed the rules just to afford him the opportunity to sit in both of those roles more often. Well, in Game 4 of the NLCS, this guy threw 6 scoreless innings, 10 strikeouts, and hit 3 home runs on his way to sealing that series and winning the NLCS MVP. And when people saw that, they had many expressions, kind of like the expressions I see in front of me right now. Unless you're a baseball fan, you're like, what does that even mean? Why is that crazy? How does that look? And what you got to understand is this was something that people didn't believe was possible. They knew when they were watching it, they'd never seen anything like that again and probably would never see anything like that again in the future. And so they said, I need you to actually explain this to me in terms that I can understand. I need you to explain this in real world terms. I need you to use language that would make sense to me who's not a baseball fan because it's so other, it's in such a different category that I need to know what this would actually mean. Shohei created a viral storm on the internet where people were just trying to create whatever ideas they could to share with people how great this achievement was. His performance in Game 4 was kind of like if you made an album and released 3 of your singles at the exact same time and they set it 1, 2, and 3 for an entire year altogether while selling 15 million records. It'd be kind of like taking the records that the Avatar movie franchise has set globally and breaking those just domestically in one day. It would be kind of like a young shepherd boy slinging a rock into the temple of a giant. It would be kind of like A great quarterback throwing 5 touchdowns, but also playing defense, getting 4 sacks and scoring a forced fumble and a pick 6. It'd be kind of like shooting a 58 at the Masters, but carrying your own bag the whole way, sewing your own green jacket and cutting the greens yourself every morning. It would be kind of like watching prime Shaquille O'Neal shoot threes as well as Steph Curry. It'd be kind of like being thrown into a fiery furnace and not dying in there, and not only not dying in there, not smelling like smoke when you came out, but actually having a 4th bro join you just to flex on the king. Just some stuff that someone saw and they said, I can't really describe. I'm in awe of what is happening before me. There's no category for that kind of greatness. It was something else entirely. And sports offer the most obvious examples, but not sports only. Because there have always been great moments and great people in history, great prodigies that show up, and we realize we're looking at something that we can't quite grasp. When Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart showed up and wrote his first symphony at the age of 8, people knew that this was something different in the world of music and composition. He definitely would have been on Oprah if such a thing existed back in those days. Or maybe for you, it's not Mozart because you're not classical, but when you saw Mike do the moonwalk on Motown 25, you knew you were in rarefied air. Or maybe it wasn't Mike. Maybe it was when you saw Whitney Houston sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl, you realized, oh, she is different. See, entertainment, like sports, breeds these moments, but entertainment does something else that is beneficial for us in our study this morning as we get into the text. Because entertainment sometimes reintroduces real-world historical moments that are transcendent but have been forgotten by time. Many of y'all will know that when they made the movie 300, a new generation became aware of King Leonidas and his valiant stand with his 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae. They did something that is now synonymous with greatness or bravery. Too few know that they were actually the second 300 to do something great like that. Shout out to my boy Gideon. You know, more important to our discussion today is that since that moment, people have analyzed and tried to break down how they did what they did, and they tried to emulate it and they tried to reproduce it. There's something about wartime and those stories that calls forth the heroic in us and captures our imaginations. It's why the text records that Saul killed his thousands, but David killed his tens of thousands. I'm partial to the real story of a man named Desmond Doss. Anyone familiar with that name? Desmond Doss, a wartime hero from World War II in the Pacific Campaign, famous for several battles, but especially what happened at Hacksaw Ridge. He's the unlikely hero of the battle because he was a pacifist. He was a conscientious objector to the war. He refused to carry a firearm himself, but he made his mark on history as a medic. At that battle, which is memorialized in the movie created after the story, he saved at least 75 people in daring fashion. But most war historians will say he saved at least double that, and he did it without carrying a weapon himself. Just his indomitable will, courage, and daring bravery all throughout that campaign. What I really love about this story is that Mel Gibson, who directed the film, said they had to leave things out of the film because if people watched it, they would think there's no way this actually happened. Now, for all of the embellishment that Hollywood does to make a story a better story, where true stories aren't really based on the true stories that they tell you the story is based on, imagine they had to actually leave out some of the great feats of this man and his heroism just so that people would remember this is a true story. We actually have to water it down to make it believable. That is a moment of greatness. Here's the thing about all these men and women in these moments. They're distinguished because they become so transcendent or other that they don't fit in any existing categories that we have for them. They are something else. They are in the dictionary beside built different. And today, as we move into our text, I want you to hear me and remember this. There's no such thing as a great life that fits in. I'm afraid you'll never achieve greatness in this life, at least not by Jesus' definition, by being just like everybody else. Some of the heads in this room are gray enough to remember playing the game Tetris when it first came out. And that's what life is like. As soon as you fit in, you disappear. But there's something that pulls at us, a desire to be like everybody else, even though we know that it's distinctiveness that makes greatness. the true greatest of all time. Jesus said a little bit about this in his most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. We talked about this several months ago, but I have some observations just quickly here that we didn't talk about on that day, because Jesus is the greatest of all time, and his words are the best and only map for anyone who would actually desire to live a great life. So in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, I'm going to share with you what he says. This is right after the section called the Beatitudes, which outline what it looks like to live a kingdom life, a life of greatness. He goes on to say this in a famous passage you may be familiar with. In verse 13, he says to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its taste, how shall the saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people hide a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to the entire house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father in heaven." Jesus is saying that every city on a hill has its day. Here's an aspect of the city on a hill metaphor that we don't understand. Look, back in the days when Jesus is talking and telling this story and using this comparison, there is no light pollution. Have you ever been in a place where there's no light pollution and you got to look up at the sky and recognize how bright the stars really are? I got some Gen Zs in the front row shaking their head like, "Nah, I don't know what that is. I've never seen that." Look, back in those days, there's no billboards, there's no street lamps, no chariot that came by had headlights on it. You were just in the dark. I'm from up north, close to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and you would be shocked. Even the Amish today have headlights on their buggies. True story. I've even seen some with stereos in the back. One time I saw a horse and buggy carrying a motorized boat behind it down into the river, and I said, "You can't put a motor in your car, but you could put a motor in your boat." Never mind, I don't want to know. The point is, in the days where Jesus is making this comparison, if you are caught in the dark, you are not safe. So if you are on a journey, a city on a hill that is illuminated is a beacon of hope and light because it represents safety from wild animals that are on the prowl and the robber barons that are on the roads. It symbolizes something greater than just the place where country folks don't want to live and city folks are kind of crazy. It represents refuge and sanctuary, salvation in a word. And what Jesus is saying is that we as a city on a hill, his people, he's making this contrast between the nature of the city and the countryside, pointing out the distinctiveness that comes with the whole city package. It's the distinctives that make the city a refuge. It's the differentness of the city that make it a place of thriving, commerce, education, arts, a source of light, resources, hope, and rest, a place of safety. And Jesus is saying that his people, his disciples, you and I, offer those same distinctives, those same qualities to the world around us. And it is important to know that Jesus is saying this right after the Beatitudes, which are a list of teachings that show that kingdom folks operate by different rules than the rest of the world. We understand blessedness and success or a life of greatness in a way that is totally counterintuitive to the world around us. We evaluate and define greatness in life in a way that is totally foreign to the world around us. The city can't do the job or the purpose of the city if the city looks like, smells like, talks like, is built like, runs like, and thinks like the countryside. The city on a hill is built different. Here is the wild thing, if we can admit it, because there's some cognitive dissonance that happens when we use this metaphor. When it's just a metaphor, we are comfortable telling ourselves all the time that we are a city on a hill. And I don't know where everybody is from, but the reality is it can get uncomfortable when we bring this metaphor into real life, because the truth is most of the people in this room are not from the city. And you ask me how I know. I can tell by the way that you talk and the way that you dress and the way that you walk. And if you are from the city, you know that that's true. Now, here's the thing. If we're being really honest, I mean on the most surface level possible, not making judgments or assertions of people's character or value, country folk do not like city folk. Do you? Don't worry, the camera's on me. No one's going to know you shook your head. Why? It's weird down there. Ever since I came to Leander, y'all have been quick to remind me that this is not Austin. We are not like them. It's weird down there. It's really liberal down there. It's blue down. It's all the wrong stuff down there. That's not how we do things up here. But I got something for you today, Leander and the rest of the burbs, if y'all are watching. they don't like y'all either. There's nothing that'll make an Austinite angrier than suggesting that Leander is part of Austin. No. Pflugerville? No, absolutely not. That's not Austin, but why? Because they're different. Jesus is calling all we suburban country folk to be a part of the living city that he has created. And in those days is a little bit different than it is now. When disaster came upon a region, everyone in the country would flock into the safety of the walls of the city. That's where all the countrymen would go. And that means that the people whose life your life is a benefit to probably don't understand the way you live your life. And they don't understand why you live your life that way. And if they're being really honest, they probably don't like you very much either. But the paradox is they need what you have. When someone doesn't understand something, they will be afraid of it. And when someone is afraid of something, they will slander something and they will say things they have no business saying because they don't know what they're talking about. So you got to understand, as the city on the hill, as the people of God, don't expect the world to understand you. Don't expect them to like the way you live, and don't expect them to speak well of you because they don't understand. Look at what Jesus says. He says, if you're living a distinctive life, a life of greatness defined by Jesus, people will be forced to give glory to God because of your deeds. Despite what they think of you, despite what they say about you, they will find refuge in you and help from you only when they have nowhere else to turn, because you're not going into the city unless you have to go into the city. Why? The traffic on 35 is too bad. I hate Mopac. The drivers are bad. People are rude. They got crazy hairstyles down there. I'm only going there if I have to. But when they finally show up, know that they need you. So my encouragement for you is, when the world finally comes to you, don't let bitterness be what they encounter. Don't let resentment be what they encounter. You should not expect them to understand you. That is part of God's design. Church, when we are who we say we want to be, who Jesus calls us to be, the outcome is going to be people coming to you in their time of need. Here's the problem. We miss so many opportunities because we know they're not living the way we think they ought to live. And by the time they actually show up to us, we have decided that they're just trying to use us, and we have no time or patience for them, no goodwill for them at all. Everybody has a friend or an acquaintance that won't return your calls, won't return your texts, but you know they're online already looking at their phone because they posted a story of what they were doing just 5 minutes ago. They can't return my text, but they can tell me what they ate at Panera Bread. I'm mad. I'm not even going to talk to them. We're not friends anymore. Look, what I'm saying is when they come to you, they have to see your good deeds that God has called you to, and not the resentment you have for what you thought they ought to have been doing when they weren't. They need to come to you and see those good works, because that is when they will be forced to glorify God. They need to see you being salt. They need to see you binding up the broken, healing, giving generously, being hospitable, being meek, being poor in spirit but rich in mercy. They need to see you give grace because you have received grace. They need to see a behavior and a response to them that they will find confusing. When you actually behave like this, people are going to look at you and say, what exactly is going on here? Because believe it or not, they know they don't deserve it either. And it will bring them to the point of this whole discussion today. When someone sees the life that you live and the light that you are and the salt that you are in circumstances where they don't expect to find it, they're going to say, I need you to explain this to me like a person watching baseball and not having any idea how great Shohei Ohtani actually is. What is going on here? And that's actually the key to our discussion for the rest of our time together. Because this is what Peter is hitting on in the text that we read just a few minutes ago. Peter actually carries on the teaching of Jesus about living a great life and a distinct life. He told us that your life is not going to look like everyone else around you. And in his first epistle, he says, who is there that will harm you if you're zealous for doing good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Remember a couple weeks ago, we said that suffering leads to glory and blessing. I digress. I'm just telling you, it's all through the scripture. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense or give account or give an explanation for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. I don't know if y'all caught what Peter just said here, but he is speaking about the reality that living a life of greatness will not be popular with the people around you. It will not be popular with them, but it will be profitable for them. He is saying that if you live this kind of life, it will seem to accomplish the opposite of what it ought to, the opposite of what you want it to. He says people are actually going to slander you. They're going to revile you for doing what is good, for living the life that Jesus has called you to. And I don't know about you, but I did not wake up today with the goal of being slandered or reviled, much less interacting with people intentionally who are doing so. And Peter is having fun here. I love how he plays with it. He says, who is going to harm you for doing good? By the way, they're all going to harm you for doing good. He says, remember, that's part of God's design. But that's not the main reason why I come to this passage today. See, we begin by thinking about those moments in history where people have recognized they were witnessing something that was outside of their comprehension, something where the math wasn't mathing, where it didn't make sense, something totally other, something totally different, moments and places and spaces where people needed new categories to understand what they were witnessing. And this passage is one where Peter is saying that the Christian life is a life that consistently creates exactly those kinds of moments for the people around you. Why? Because Peter says, be ready to give an answer or an explanation or a defense for the hope that is in you. And so often when we look at this verse, we think that this means I need to know all of the biblical answers that could possibly come from somebody before I share Jesus with them. Why don't I share Jesus with people? Because I don't think I know enough. What if they ask a question that I don't know the answer to? Wouldn't that mean that I'm not qualified? Wouldn't that shake their faith? Wouldn't that mean they wouldn't believe? We start thinking about all the reasons why we got to know all the little specifics to every single question that could happen, and we shock ourselves into analysis paralysis, and we end up not sharing Jesus with anybody at all. But that's not actually what is happening. But Peter's not saying, hey, you better have the perfect apologetic argument ready to dispute the presence of God, the deity of Jesus, the validity of the scriptures. All those are great things for you to have under your belt. But that's not what he's saying in this verse. Peter's not saying be ready to give the cosmological argument for the existence of the universe and God. No, look what he actually says. Be ready to give an answer for the words that are in the Bible. No. Be ready to give an answer for the explanation and claims that are found in the Bible. No. He says, be ready to give an answer for the hope that is already inside of you. Peter says, when people see your life, and they see your good deeds, they are going to look at you like someone who knows nothing about baseball, who is witnessing Shohei pitch 6 scoreless innings with 10 strikeouts, 3 home runs, one of them being a 463-foot bomb way outside the stadium to win the NLCS. They're going to need an explanation for what they are seeing happen in front of them. Peter says that when you live a great life as Jesus defines it, people will see your life, they will see your hope, and they will have to say to you, explain this to me in terms that I understand, because I don't get why you are the way that you are. This doesn't make any sense at all. He says a real life of greatness is a life that confounds the world around it because there's no category for it. It's something else entirely. When people see your life and the circumstances of your life that would usually dictate anxiety, they say peace, and not just peace, but peace that passes understanding. When they see you go through difficult times, there should be hopelessness, but for some reason you have a joy that can't be taken away from you. When they see things go wrong in your life that aren't your fault, where there should be bitterness, there's kindness. When they would expect because of injustices that you've endured, there would be full-blown crash outs. There's self-control instead. When you'd expect to see harshness for the way that people treat you, instead, gentleness is what you return. When you're mistreated, instead of hate and resentment multiplying in your heart, they see nothing but love continuing to show up at the table. And when they would absolutely not fault you for having a short fuse, there's patience that they can't explain or understand. Peter says, when all the world has gone mad, when everything around you has gone bad, people inexplicably see goodness. They see Jesus. They see a city on a hill. None of what they're seeing makes sense to them. And they're going to come to you and they're going to ask, why are you the way that you are? how do you do it? I don't even care how you do it. Why do you do it? Here's the best part about this, church. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we can create opportunities to tell the world about Jesus, don't we? I think sometimes we miss what Peter and Jesus are trying to tell us. They're telling us that if we live lives of greatness as defined by Jesus, we're not going to have to figure out how to create opportunities to tell the world about Jesus because the world is just going to ask us. Those opportunities will create themselves. How do I know this? Because you don't have to be ready to give an answer, defense, or explanation unless there was first a question. Have you ever sat and thought, what's a question I can ask someone to get into a spiritual conversation? I'm not faulting you for that. I'm saying Peter's telling you, actually, if you live the way that Jesus is calling you to live, they're going to have questions for you. Someone asks you the reason for the hope that is in you and what makes you do the things that you do. You don't have to worry about getting permission to tell them the most important thing that they need to know. Because when they ask you that question, they're giving you permission to introduce them to the goat that lives inside of you. All you got to be ready to do is put the glory for the good where the glory is actually due. And I'm afraid we miss a lot of opportunities because the last time you were going through a difficult moment and you came and you sat in church and you prayed and you received strength and there was community and they wrapped their arms around you and you went back to work the next day and someone said to you, man, I don't know how you're getting through what you're going through. I know it's been really tough. And you say, hey, I just take it one day at a time. You know what you should have said? Jesus, that's how I'm getting through what I'm going through. They just gave you permission. I'm guilty too. We leave a lot of opportunities on the table to do what we say we want to do because we're not remembering that this is part of the design. This is how God drew it up. So now that we know these things, that a life of greatness, as Jesus defines it, will cause people to glorify God and yet paradoxically slander you, we know that eventually they will come and ask you the reason. But there is something else that will happen too that is really important, and this is the ultimate goal. How many of y'all were alive in 1954? Nobody wants to claim that today. Some of y'all were alive in 1954. And we love you, like we have a lot to learn from you. This is not that kind of church. We love our 54s in here. In 1954, there was a man by the name of Roger Bannister. Some of y'all might be familiar with the name. Roger Bannister accomplished a feat in life that people thought was previously impossible. This man, Roger Bannister, ran a sub 4-minute mile. If someone asked me to run a sub 10-minute mile, we got a task cut in front of us. A sub 4-minute mile. Before Roger, it was considered impossible to accomplish such a feat because it was just beyond the known capabilities of the human body. But Roger defied the known capabilities, and not only did he run a 3:59.4 mile, not only was it a record that redefined what greatness looked like, it would go on to change everything. Because before Roger, everyone thought it was impossible. But after Roger did it, they saw that it was possible and the floodgates opened. Now people had a new standard to follow, something to imitate, something to shoot for. They were inspired to something greater. In 1954, no one had ever run that far, that fast. But within 3 years of him breaking that mark, 15 other men had done it. Within 10 years, there was a high school kid who ran a sub 4-minute mile. And nothing lets you know you're getting old than when the high school kids start to be better than the pros back in your day. You know, now there are over 2,000 people that have run documented sub 4-minute miles. That feat went from impossible to inspiration to possible to relatively common. Because what you have to know about greatness is that when it shows up, it always gets imitated. People always imitate what they recognize as great. Last week we talked about Mike, and we weren't just wearing the shoes and being reckless with our layups. Little kids everywhere were sticking their tongue out and around the house, pretending that everybody wants to imitate greatness. I'll be straight with you. I have zero illusions that I'm ever going to run a 4-minute mile. It's probably not in the cards for me, no matter how many other people make that mark. My best is finishing a 5K on a morning after I ate way too much Taco Bell and bled and wept across the finish line in about 21 minutes. I don't even want to be like Mike, but I do know that the key to mine being a meaningful life is that I imitate Christ. Someone who has gone before, someone who showed a greater standard of what is possible, someone who showed us what it looks like. If we're talking about people whose greatness is impossible to categorize, Jesus is undoubtedly the one who should be before each and every one of our eyes. His otherness is documented. When Jesus spoke, people said, "Never has a man spake like this man." That was King James Version for those of y'all that won't admit you were alive in 1954. When Jesus healed, when Jesus cast out demons, they responded to him by saying, "Who is this that even the demons obey him?" When he stills the storm, the disciples say, "Who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him?" He was something different. Who is this? What is this that we're in the presence of? And even Jesus knew and told us that my kingdom is not of this world. I am something else. I am shooting for something else. I'm grading on a different scale. Jesus' world is in a different category because the world judges greatness by the volume of applause and your level of success. But Jesus' life was and is a life that redefines greatness as a life of ultimate sacrifice and eternal significance. It's a totally different ball game. Jesus confounds the world and draws the slander of the world, but the world can't help but recognize the glory of his life and his works because Jesus is the original greatest of all time. He's the category breaker. He's a category all his own. His life is a life of value, and it's not because he pursued validating his own value. It's because his life touches other lives to bring them value too. And that's the standard of greatness for a disciple of Jesus. Not that you would amass acclaim and affirmation or applause, but that when your life touches another life, they receive the value too. Therefore, as his disciples, ours is a life that's not concerned with being people of success. If you have a person of value in your midst, it is something greater than fleeting success could ever offer. Most people think if they have success, they'll find fulfillment. But success in and of itself is hollow, especially the way the world defines it. I'm blessed to know many highly successful people, but they are still bitter and anxious and fearful, and they are owned by the grind that they worship. Make no mistake, for any human, your deepest need is not success, it is significance. You need to know that what you are doing matters, and because what you are doing matters, you matter. But the caveat is, real success isn't what you accomplish for yourself. Significance is what you accomplish for others. That lives forever. The Christian must say, if I'm going to be remembered at all, I don't want to be remembered for what I do or what I gain or what I have. But if people remember me, I want them to remember me for the encouragement and value that I added to their life. More than that, I want them to see my life, and in response, I want them to likewise imitate Christ. This is why Paul would write, "Imitate me even as I imitate Christ." So this morning, I charge you to live a great life imitating Christ and be conformed more and more into his image and likeness day by day. I want you to know that people may not like you. I want you to know that people are going to slander you. But I remind you not to become bitter because that is part of the process. When they see your life, they'll come to you exasperated saying, "Explain this to me. I need to know what is going on." And when they do, your only call is to point them to the greatest of all time that lives inside of you. This is how you be like Christ. And this is the only way to live a great life. I got one more story for you this morning, if we can do that. One more. I know what some of you have to be thinking because I have thought it many times. And even in preparation for this message, I thought it. You're thinking, yeah, I do want to live a great life. I really want to live a significant life. I want to follow Jesus. I want to imitate Jesus. But you're looking at your life and you're looking at your mistakes and your shortcomings, all the places that you've fallen short. You're looking at all the places you don't add up or measure up. And you're looking at all those great stories and icons that we mentioned today. And you're saying, I'm not good enough to be like any of those people. And there's part of you where the insecurities are just ringing loud. I can't be like any of those people. How in the world could I be like Christ? I'll never be that good. I've tried and tried and tried. I always fall short. I'm embarrassed of who I am most of the time. I can't be what I want to be. I'll never make it. You know what, Marcus? It sounds really nice, and it must be easy for you to get up there every Sunday with these high-sounding platitudes. It sounds great intellectually, but Marcus, it's a real world out there, and it's ugly, and it hurts. It's great in theory, Marcus, but I'm not sure I could actually live this kind of life. Maybe I'm not cut for greatness. Maybe the best I could do is just get through today. And if I'm really being honest with you, most days I don't feel like I'm going to make it at all. I hear you. That's why I'm going to share one more tale with you. If any of you are familiar with the name Derek Redmond, Derek was a world-class sprinter. He's a British guy. He held the British record for the 400. And back going into the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona, he was favored to be one of the folks who was going to run away with that gold medal. He trained his entire life for this moment. He lined up for the race hoping that he was going to cement his name in history, that he was going to achieve the greatness that he dedicated his entire life for. If you know anything about Olympians, from a very young age, they get sequestered off, they do their own schooling away from everyone else, and they just train and they train and they train. Their entire life leads up to the moment where they step on the world stage and they compete in their specialized, singular event. And this is Derek Redmond at the top of his game, at the top of the sport, with the world watching. Feel the gravity of the moment. He's running the 400 meter in the semifinal. Favorite to win. Takes off. Everything looks good. Beautiful stride. He says he feel like he got shot. He actually tore his hamstring. As he realizes that he's not going to be able to continue, sees all of his dreams, all of his hard work, his entire life slip between his fingers. The crowd realizes something is wrong. He gets up, decides he's gonna hobble. He doesn't think he's gonna be able to make it across the finish line, but he's gonna go as far as he can, and then something incredible happens. His father breaks through the obstacle, the barrier, pushes a man out of the way, joins his son, carries him. When Derek realizes that it's his dad that came to get him, his father, he breaks down, overcome with emotion. His dad just tells him, keep putting one foot in front of the other, son. One at a time. You got one leg, but we're gonna finish. Derek Redmond with his father go on to cross the finish line in a moment that has gone down as one of, if not the greatest moment in Olympic history. You see, Derek felt his entire life tear to pieces before the watching world. He said he didn't think he was going to make it. He didn't think he was going to win, let alone finish. He wasn't going to achieve greatness, at least the way that he envisioned it. And then his father shows up, breaking through every obstacle. And there in front of a great cloud of witnesses, Derek Redmond, in the arms of his father, found what he needed to finish the race. And as he did, he cemented his name in one of the greatest moments in history, not the way that it had been done before, not the way everyone expected him to do it. He did it in a way that nobody had a category for. He did it by redefining for us what greatness actually looks like. All he needed to do was just keep going. And all he needed was the strength of his father. Don't miss what I'm saying. All he needed was the strength of his father to be able to put one foot in front of the other, to get up and keep going. I don't know what metaphorical race you might be running. I don't know what mistakes you've made. I don't know what falls you've taken. I don't know what wounds you carry at this moment, but here's what I do know. No matter what you've done and no matter what has happened to you, you are called to live a great life. And your Father is just waiting to rescue you. I think sometimes we see God as the Father who sits in the stands while we run and fall and fail with his arms folded, disgusted and disappointed at the mistakes that we make and our falling short. But the truth is, our God is a Father who burst out of the stands and broke through the barrier, destroying the middle wall of separation, destroying the enmity that was between us. He's the Father that came to get us at our lowest moment. He's the Father that lets us lean on his shoulder. He's the Father that has the strength that we need that we don't have in and of ourselves. He's the Father that looks at us and loves us and is proud of us no matter what has happened to us. And all he asks us to do is put one foot in front of the other. We have a Father that wants us to cross the finish line having lived a life of greatness, not by the world's standards, not by our own standards, but by his Son's standards. This is an incredible thought. Did you know that the greatest of all time wants to walk arm in arm with you across the finish line? Did you know that you were never meant to cross that line alone? He wants to go with you. And so, as the Hebrew writer said, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the author and perfecter and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despised the shame, and is now seated at the right hand of God. That's why we do what we do. I want you to live a great life today and every day, church. I want the world to see your deeds. And I want you to know that even when they mock you, there's going to come a day when they're going to have to ask you why you are the way that you are. And on that day, you're going to get the great honor of introducing them to the greatest of all time. The great goat who isn't a goat. The goat who is a lion. The goat who is a lamb. The kind of Father that tears down every barrier to come and get you. We're going to sing an invitation song, and we do this every week because for us, the journey to the finish line always starts with one step towards Jesus or a step back towards Jesus. So if you've never made Jesus the Lord of your life and you've never submitted to him, today's a great day to do it, no matter what you've been going through. And if you've already done that, but you blew your hamstring in a manner of speaking, you think he's disappointed with you, and life is too much, and you're not sure how you're going to get across the finish line, you can take a step back. Keep going with him because he's never going to leave you or desert you. If we could serve you in either of those ways, it would be an honor to cheer for you along with the great cloud of witnesses. Would you come as we stand?